This video is a continuation of topics in Chapter 6. We're still talking about sentence rhythm, but our focus for today is on commas and power words. This is pages 114 to 122 in your textbook. As our book says on page 115, when we see a comma, we draw out and emphasize the word before it. How many of you use commas where you would pause in the sentence? Sometimes that gets us in a lot of trouble because we pause between a subject and a verb, or we pause in the middle of a prepositional phrase. But what a comma does is it interrupts the sentence, and in the same manner as our it and what clef transformations are their transformation, allows us to pull the reader's focus to a particular part of the sentence. Here's an excerpt from British Romantic poet John Keats' poem Ode on a Grecian Urn. I want you to read these lines to yourself or to a friend. There are a lot of commas in here, and I want you to see, do you fulfill our book's predictions? Do you emphasize and elongate the word that comes before a comma? Are you pausing? Do you have a rising intonation as you read this? Here's how I would read the last 5 lines. Thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare, bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss. Though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve, she cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. For ever wilt thou love, and she be fair. When we study poetry, we often look at the rhythm, the meter, how many feet are in a line. So perhaps we pay more attention to commas when we see them in verse. Did you read those lines differently? Where are you allowed to put commas grammatically? We're not supposed to put them wherever we feel like pausing. Here are 2 classes of words or phrases that you're allowed to set off in commas. Conjunctive adverbs. You put commas around these, and especially after them. Therefore, comma, we need to watch the video again. Of course, she is going to pass this class. Your book gives several examples at the bottom of page 115 where you can see these conjunctive adverbs and transitional phrases in the middle of a sentence set off by commas. And I'm going to read number 4 so you can hear how I at least would read through these commas. When you study grammar at school, then, you are studying what you already know. Think back to when we studied end focus and the known new contract. Where does the reader's focus typically go? At the end of a sentence. But if we use conjunctive adverbs and transitional phrases, we can break the sentence rhythm. We can pull the emphasis to the middle of a sentence, toward the beginning. So here are 2 sentences for quick practice. Add what I'm calling a comma phrase, either a conjunctive adverb or a transitional phrase, to change up the sentence rhythm. What do you want to emphasize in these sentences? Pause the video, pick your adverb or your transition. Here are some choices. Maybe I want to emphasize the moral. In fact, the moral of the story is clear. Maybe I want to emphasize story. The moral of the story, however, is clear. Perhaps I want to draw focus to its clarity. The moral of the story is clear, of course. Same situation with sentence number 2. Do I want to emphasize the requirements, students? Where do I want to, as our book says on page 115, shift the peak of stress by inserting a comma phrase? Which of these do you like best? Do you like your own version best? Why? Why does this rhythm appeal to you? On page 117, the book introduces the concept of power words. As it says at the top, some words are powerful enough to interrupt the usual rhythm pattern on their own, even without commas or sentence shifts. This can include modified adjectives and adverbs. Whenever we say very or most, that tends to pull focus. Correlative conjunctions, both this and that. Neither this nor that. Emphasizing adverbials, especially in the superlative degree. Your book gives examples like quite gracefully or loudest, fastest. And the word only. The bottom line is, all of these change sentence rhythm. Just because these are called power words doesn't mean that you get more power by using them. To quote the book once again, the point to remember is that when you do use them, they will command attention. These words change the atmosphere of the sentences they inhabit. So here's some examples of how modifiers can add power. My payment was overdue. My payment was definitely overdue. My roommate's music was loud. My roommate's music was extremely loud. Is this how you would read these modified phrases? Would you put emphasis on the adverb or ly words? Superlatives add power. Let's review some research. Let's review the latest research. Don't you always want to have the latest of everything, the newest of everything? You want to surround yourself with the best and the smartest people? These words call attention to themselves. When you use most in a phrase or sentence, this is a power word. That course is difficult. That course is the most difficult. And could you read this sentence another way? That course is the most difficult. That course is the most difficult. That course is the most difficult. There are a lot of variations, but probably you'd agree that that course is the most difficult, at least sounds natural. So let's look at this description. Is most behaving as a power word? There is a very life in our despair, vitality of poison, a quick root, which feeds these deadly branches. For it were as nothing did we die, but life will suit itself to sorrow's most detested fruit. Like to the apples on the Dead Sea's shore, all ashes to the taste. And this is from a long narrative poem by Lord Byron, who, like John Keats, falls in the British Romantic period. Where do you see power words? There is a very life in our despair. Would the fifth line be the same without most? Itself to sorrow's detested fruit versus itself to sorrow's most detested fruit. So what's your conclusion? Is power added to this description? Why or why not? Another practice using the same two sentences as earlier, only this time instead of adding a comma phrase, I want you to add a modified adjective, adverb, or noun. These are just some examples. You might have come up with better sentences. My goal here was simply to show you that depending on the modified word you use, you can draw focus to the end, the beginning, the middle of a sentence. We've talked about correlative conjunctions before. They're useful for shifting the focus of a sentence not only from the end to the beginning, but from the verb to the subject of the sentence. Correlative conjunctions include pairs like both and, either or, neither nor, and not only but also. They always have to be used as a pair. They're relatives. They travel in packs. Here's an example from William Wordsworth's autobiographical poem, The Prelude. We're still talking about British Romantic writers. I've put the correlative conjunction in bold. Would you stress these? Is your eye or your ear drawn to this part of the poem? He who in his youth a daily wanderer among woods and fields with living nature hath been intimate, not only in that raw and practised time is stirred to ecstasy as others are by glittering verse, but further doth receive in measure only dealt out to himself knowledge and increase of enduring joy from the great nature that exists in works of mighty poets. Where else is focus drawn? Do you see some powerful comma use? Do you see some modifiers? Would the final line be the same if it simply said of poets? Or is there more emphasis with of mighty poets? Page 119 in chapter 6 talks about adverbials of emphasis. Adverbs move. They modify verbs. They give us information about when, where, and how. The chart you see below, however, includes words and phrases that tend to get stressed when used in a sentence. Your book uses examples like, some people are always looking for trouble. I could hardly sleep last night. Same two sentences. Now rewrite them with an adverbial of emphasis from the previous slide. What do you want to emphasize? Here are some choices. The moral of the story rarely is clear. Finally, the moral of the story is clear. The moral of the story is clear afterwards. The requirements always confuse students. The requirements confuse students already. The requirements seldom confuse students. Could you read these sentences with different intonation, different stress, different emphasis? Or do these adverbs sort of demand more attention? At the end of chapter 6, our book discusses the case of only. This is an adverbial of emphasis. And our book's authors say it often gets misplaced. Maybe that's too picky a judgment. Because if we are being picky, only should emphasize the word that comes directly after it. I'm taking only 12 credits this semester. Paul cleans the house only on Saturdays. But we often use only separated from another word that demands emphasis. I only have eyes for you. Well, that's 3 stresses. Use only in cases where you really want to emphasize the word that comes directly after it. If we look at these excerpts from the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by British Romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, does the only stand out to you? Has Coleridge made a powerful, emphatic choice? Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down, 'twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right up above the mast did stand no bigger than the moon. What do you think? Does it catch your eye? Did it catch your ear? Or does it fade into the rhythm of the verse? Just to recap, today's quiz is going to deal with how commas, power words, and adverbials of emphasis can change sentence rhythm.